Peppa Pig's house always seemed like a safe place, warm and cozy, but none of its inhabitants even suspected what dark secrets could be hidden in the most ordinary objects, such as the old phone in the hallway. George plays in the living room with his toys. Suddenly, the old phone in the hallway starts ringing. The phone's sound is strange and frightening. Nobody expected a call at this time. George approaches the phone and picks up the receiver. A weak, trembling voice comes from it. The voice whispers, "Help me get out of here." George doesn't understand who is speaking. The voice becomes more desperate and insistent. It asks George to find a way to free it. George calls Peppa, but when she approaches, the voice in the receiver disappears. The phone is silent as if nothing happened. Peppa doesn't believe her brother and thinks he's making it up. But George knows he heard a real voice. At night, the phone rings again. George quietly goes downstairs to answer. The voice now sounds even more pitiful. It tells that it's trapped in a dark place. George asks where the speaker is located. The voice answers that it's inside the phone itself. Strange sounds begin coming from the receiver, scratching, whispers, and echoes from another world. George tries to help and shakes the phone. Something moves and knocks inside. Mummy Pig finds George with the phone. She's concerned about his strange behavior. When Mummy takes the receiver, she also hears the voice. Now it asks for her help. The voice explains that evil Labubu lured it into the phone. Now it can't get out. The family gathers around the phone. Everyone hears pleas for help from the receiver. Daddy Pig tries to disassemble the phone, but the screws won't budge. Something holds them in place. Suddenly, the dark figure of Labubu emerges from the phone. His red eyes glow ominously. Labubu laughs and explains his plan. He collects voices in the phone for his collection. The phone begins sucking in sounds around it. The family's voices become quieter and quieter. George realizes they're trapped. Labubu wants to take their voices forever. The family tries to scream, but sounds disappear into the phone. Their voices become part of the collection. Labubu disappears, leaving the family without voices. Now they can only silently open their mouths. New voices asking for help are heard in the phone. The family has become part of the trap. The phone awaits the next victims. Who will dare to answer its ominous call? Peppa Pig's house always seemed like the safest place, filled with laughter and joy. But today something had changed in the familiar world of little pigs. George was playing alone in the yard while family was busy. His curious gaze fell upon the old building by the lake. The abandoned structure beckoned the boy with its dark windows. Nobody remembered who built this place or when it appeared. George slowly approached the crooked door of the building. Rusty hinges creaked in the cold wind from the lake. Inside the building reigned strange silence and twilight. Dusty floorboards creaked under his small hooves as he entered. Old paintings hung on the walls with smiling faces, but the smiles seemed too wide and unnaturally stretched across features. In the corner stood an old television box. The screen flickered with weak greenish light without any sound. George approached the mysterious device with growing interest and curiosity. A familiar yellow face appeared on the glowing screen. It was SpongeBob, but something was terribly wrong with him. His eyes glowed with red light, full of pure malice. Evil SpongeBob smiled at George through the television screen. His teeth were sharp like razor blades, gleaming menacingly. The screen began to crack and spark with electricity. The room filled with ominous buzzing and crackling electrical sounds. George tried to run away, but the door slammed shut. Windows became covered with thick, dark film from the inside. Evil SpongeBob began crawling out from the television screen slowly. His body stretched and deformed in horrifying, impossible ways. The creature's red eyes followed every movement George made. The boy pressed against the wall, trembling with fear. Peppa noticed her brother's absence only by evening time. The family began searching for George throughout the entire house. Daddy Pig searched the garden and surrounding house areas thoroughly. Mummy Pig checked all of the boys' favorite hiding places. They found only small footprints leading toward the lake. The abandoned building stood in complete darkness and eerie silence. The building's door was tightly locked and wouldn't budge. Windows were black like bottomless wells of endless night. The family knocked and shouted, but no answer came. Only echo reflected from the cold walls of structure. Inside the building came weak, childish crying from George. But the sound became quieter and more distant gradually. On the old television screen flashed a malicious smile briefly. Red eyes watched what was happening outside the building. In the morning, the building looked completely ordinary and empty. But George never returned home to his worried family. Sometimes at night, residents hear childish laughter echoing around. It comes from the abandoned building by the lake. Peppa's house always seemed like the safest place in the world. But tonight, something sinister lurks behind the glowing screen. Peppa sits comfortably watching her favorite SpongeBob cartoon. The familiar yellow character dances happily on screen. Suddenly, the television screen begins to flicker strangely. SpongeBob's cheerful smile slowly transforms into something terrifying. Red eyes replace the innocent blue ones. Sharp teeth emerge where a gentle smile used to be. The evil SpongeBob presses against the screen from inside. Glass begins to crack under his supernatural pressure. With a horrifying crash, the monster breaks through. Evil SpongeBob emerges into Peppa's living room. Peppa screams in terror as the nightmare becomes reality. The creature towers over her with glowing red eyes. Evil SpongeBob's laugh echoes through the house menacingly. His sharp teeth gleam in the dim light. Mama Pig rushes downstairs, hearing Peppa's frightened cries. She freezes, seeing the terrifying yellow monster. The evil creature turns his attention to Mama Pig. His red eyes burn with malicious intent and hunger. Papa Pig appears but immediately backs away in horror. The family huddles together against the supernatural threat. Evil SpongeBob begins to grow larger and more threatening. His presence fills the entire room with darkness. The monster reaches out with twisted yellow hands. He wants to drag the family into his television world. Peppa tries to run but finds herself trapped. Evil SpongeBob blocks every escape route with supernatural speed. The creature opens a portal back to the television. Dark energy swirls around the glowing screen menacingly. One by one, family members are pulled toward the portal. They cannot resist the evil SpongeBob's supernatural power. Peppa watches helplessly as her parents disappear into the screen. She realizes she will be next victim. Evil SpongeBob grabs Peppa with his cold yellow hands. She feels herself being dragged toward the television portal. The living room becomes empty and silent once more. Only the flickering television remains as evidence. Inside the screen, the family is trapped forever. They can only watch as evil SpongeBob seeks new victims. The television turns itself on every night automatically. Evil SpongeBob waits patiently for unsuspecting children. His red eyes scan through the screen constantly. The monster searches for his next innocent victims. The peaceful village where Peppa Pig lived had always been safe and cheerful, but deep in the dark forest, something ancient and terrible had awakened from its slumber. Strange roars echoed through the trees at night, frightening all the animals. The forest creatures whispered about a green giant with glowing red eyes. Peppa heard the grown-ups talking about the mysterious newcomer in hushed voices. They said he was different from anyone they had ever seen. Daddy Pig dismissed the rumors as silly forest tales and legends, but Mummy Pig noticed how the birds had stopped singing near the woods. George found strange, massive footprints near their garden fence one morning. The prints were deeper than any animal they knew could make. Grandpa Pig warned the family to stay away from the forest. But curiosity burned bright in Peppa's adventurous heart, stronger than any warning. The family decided to venture into the woods to meet their neighbor. They packed a picnic basket, thinking it would be a friendly visit. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees grew taller and darker. The cheerful bird song faded into an eerie, unnatural silence. A terrible smell filled the air, like rotting vegetables and swamp water. Mummy Pig suggested they should turn back, but Daddy Pig insisted they continue. They found a crude hut made of mud and twisted branches. Smoke rose from a chimney and strange shadows moved behind dirty windows. The door creaked open, revealing a massive green figure with burning eyes. His smile showed rows of sharp, yellowed teeth that gleamed menacingly. Shrek's voice was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder before a storm. He invited the family inside with gestures that seemed almost too eager. The interior of the hut was dark and filled with mysterious objects. Bones hung from the ceiling, and strange potions bubbled in dirty cauldrons. Peppa felt uneasy as Shrek's red eyes followed their every movement. George hid behind Mummy Pig, sensing something was terribly wrong with their host. Shrek offered them food that looked spoiled and smelled awful. When they politely declined, his friendly expression began to change into something sinister. The family tried to leave, but the door had mysteriously locked itself. The windows were too high, and Shrek blocked their only escape route. One by one, the family members began to feel drowsy and confused. The air in the hut seemed to grow thicker and harder to breathe. Peppa's vision blurred as she watched her family members collapse around her. Shrek's laughter echoed through the hut, cold and terrifying. The next morning, the village noticed the pig family hadn't returned home. Search parties combed the forest but found no trace of them. Days passed and the family's house stood empty and silent. Their car remained in the driveway, covered with fallen leaves and morning dew. Weeks later, hikers reported seeing strange lights in Shrek's part of the forest. But when they investigated, they found only an empty clearing. The hut had vanished without a trace, leaving only scorched earth behind. No one ever saw the pig family or the mysterious green stranger again. Local children now avoid the forest, especially when darkness falls. Peppa Pig's house always seemed like the safest place, but dark secrets lurked in the shadows outside. Peppa played happily in the garden alone today. A terrifying green shadow watched from behind trees. Evil Shrek emerged with glowing red eyes menacingly. His menacing smile promised something dreadful would happen. Peppa noticed the monster approaching slowly toward her. She tried to run but felt strangely paralyzed. Shrek's hypnotic gaze trapped little Peppa completely helpless. She walked toward him like a sleepwalker. The ogre grabbed Peppa and vanished quickly. Only her red shoes remained on grass. George found Peppa's shoes in the garden. He ran inside, screaming for help desperately. Mummy Pig and Daddy Pig rushed outside frantically. The garden was empty except for shoes. The family searched every corner frantically, calling loudly. But Peppa had disappeared without any trace. Grandpa Pig joined the desperate search mission immediately. Even he couldn't find any clues anywhere. Police arrived with search dogs immediately for help. The dogs led them to Forest Edge. Deep in the dark forest stood mysteriously an ancient tower covered in twisted vines. Shrek had locked Peppa in highest room cruelly. The tower had no doors or stairs. Peppa sat trapped behind stone walls, crying softly. The window was too high to escape. Days passed, but nobody found the tower. It remained hidden by evil magic spells. The family put up missing posters everywhere desperately. Peppa's face smiled from every wall sadly. Weeks turned into months of searching hopelessly everywhere. Still no sign of little Peppa anywhere. Grandpa told ancient legends about the cursed tower. It only appears to chosen victims mysteriously. George drew pictures of his missing sister. He never stopped believing she'd return home. The house felt empty without Peppa's joyful laughter. Her room remained exactly the same always. Sometimes they heard faint crying sounds echoing, coming from deep within the forest depths. But whenever they followed the sounds carefully, the crying would suddenly stop completely silent. Peppa remained trapped in the stone tower forever, watching the world through tiny window bars. She could see her family searching below, but they could never see her above. Peppa's house always seemed like a safe place, But nobody knew what dark secrets were hidden here. The family returns home after a long vacation. Heavy suitcases bang loudly on the porch steps. Daddy Pig opens the door with his key. The lock creaks strangely and ominously in the silence. Peppa runs inside, oinking happily with joy. Her bright smile quickly disappears from her face. Things in the living room are out of place. Someone was definitely here during their absence. Mummy Pig notices wet footprints on the floor. They lead from the front door to the stairs. George clutches Mr. Dinosaur tightly to his chest. The little one senses danger in the house. Daddy turns on the lights, but bulbs flicker. Electricity creates eerie shadows dancing on walls. Strange sounds come from the bathroom upstairs. Someone is splashing in the water above them. The family slowly climbs the creaking stairs. Each step groans ominously under their feet. The sounds become louder and much stranger. This is definitely not ordinary bathing. Peppa carefully opens the bathroom door. Inside glows dim reddish light from flickering candles. In the bathtub sits a creature with coral red fur, huge glowing eyes and a terrifying smile. Labubu slowly turns his head toward the family. Sharp teeth glisten in the flickering candlelight. The creature begins to giggle quietly. The sound echoes throughout the entire house eerily. The water in the tub turns dark and murky. Labubu smiles without taking his eyes off them. Daddy tries desperately to close the door. The handle burns his hand with icy cold. Labubu rises from the bathtub very slowly. He takes a deliberate step toward the exit. The family steps back in terror. The corridor seems infinitely long and endless now. Candles go out one by one mysteriously. The house plunges into complete and total darkness. In the darkness, only soft giggling is heard. Labubu is nearby, but completely invisible. Light returns suddenly. Family finds themselves in living room. Everything looks normal and peaceful again. On the table lies a mysterious note. Welcome home. The strange handwriting frightens everyone deeply. Peppa looks up and sees wet marks. Labubu is still somewhere in the house. The family no longer feels safe at home. Every night they hear giggling from the bathroom.